We're live.
Well, hi guys. Welcome to On Contracts. I usually see our little countdown of 3, 2, 1, which I missed completely. So I thank you all for joining us today for our On Contracts session that we're doing. And I'm going to do something a little different today. We've been having realtors on this each time, and we do have some of us on here to represent, but today I'm sitting with two of my favorite people. And the reason they're some of my favorite people is every time I'm around them, there's some green stuff going on, like getting paid. So I really love having this group of people together. So seriously, let me introduce our group today. Of course, we have Ashley Gentry with us, and she's going to be manning our questions. And please, throughout this, guys, bring the questions on. You go into the chat box, throw the questions out there, and we'll discuss them. If we can stop right then and answer them, we will. But if not, we'll certainly answer them by the end. But we also have Lathram Pou with National Title Group.
Hello.
And we have Jason Browning with Academy Mortgage.
Hi, guys.
And seriously, you guys just bring it every time. I heard a really incredible statistic of 98% of closings aren't happening on time. And when I heard that, I just went, I'm not having that problem. I've not seen it. I mean, we just have not had any closings being delayed. But then I kind of surround myself with really great people, and so I don't know. Is it a people issue? Is it a systemic of what's happening out there? And so that is part of what I want to talk about today, guys. Is let's talk about what's happening out there and how is it affecting the mortgage part of it. Jason and Lathram, how are you seeing it affecting the title end of it? So let's throw it out there and let's talk about it. What are we seeing out there? But again, Jason, I'm not seeing closings delayed. But
to your point, we're not missing closings on purchase deals. We're being very systematic on prioritizing our closings for purchase loans versus refinances. So, I'm still getting loans from, app to approval 23 days. So, it's just a matter of having that plan in place.
I want to go back and talk about something you mentioned earlier when we were discussing this. Your suggestion, if you had your wish list, and I think we ought to look at things as if I had my wish list, what would a contract look like? And I think your thought process of 30 days after option period is absolutely perfect. Right. So in other words, instead of trying to write your contract with an effective date of, say, October 1st and close it on October 30th, maybe wait until, say, November 10th or something. So get past your option period and then have your 30 days click in. Would that be your optimum wish list if you could have it?
Yeah, the thing you don't want to have happen is everybody gets excited, they accept the contract, and then they start doing the negotiation, and it doesn't land on my desk for that 10 days. And then to your point, saying November 10th, that if you read the contract, it says on or before, and we're moving closings up. So I'd rather have that option than to make that call and say we need to, just because I only got it 20 days ago, have a conversation about that. You still can make it happen. It just gets a little uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. That's a great point. It's on or before, and everyone needs to understand and take that for face value, because no one wants to have to ask for an extension. That's not a fun process for anybody.
No, and I get that having to get documents from an employer that's out of state. I mean, I get it. I get that there's some issues there that just can't be overcome. But for the most part, the thing should be pretty seamless. I mean, it should be from beginning to end.
Well, and to your point there too, if you have one that you just got to win the deal and the time is going to win it, let's have a conversation about that. And the one-offs I can close in 14 days, but not 10 in a row. You've got to balance those deals with with ones that have a normal timeline, right?
So Lathram, let's throw it out to you though, because we've got title policy still needs to be put together, and the legal work needs to be. So you tell me, what does that do to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, there's no two ways about it. Everyone is moving very quickly now for a multitude of reasons. And so what we're always saying is, sometimes we'll see that agents, especially on the buy side, they know they need to call their inspector and make sure that they can get an inspector within that option period. But a lot of times it stops at that. And there's a whole lot more service components, a lot of other service providers that are involved in a transaction. So just like Jason's saying, I need some heads up. Come talk to me. Let's see where my pipeline is, because I'm going to shoot you straight. Call the title company, see how long it's taking to get a title commitment put together, and or how quickly the surveyors are also working, because we've also had a ton of rain. We saw a deal where they thought it was a platted lot. It wasn't. It was meets and bounds, so there was already a little bit of a delay. Then they had a hard time finding the stakes in the back, so they couldn't find a back property line. And then it rained for 4 straight days. Yeah. So doing a little bit of legwork prior to signing that contract is going to pay dividends. No two ways about it. And, one thing that we always help educate our agents with is, Jason's talking about that option period. There's so much that's going on before everyone's truly committed to this asset. And so that's why you really need a 30-day window, possibly after the option period. But we got to address what's going on during that option period, because sometimes you can't even accomplish those goals within the time frame.
Good point. So if you have a lot of repairs and stuff, just trying to get tradesmen out there now to give you informed decisions is a whole other issue here. So the roofer, the plumber, the air conditioning guy, so that we have a willing buyer and a willing seller. Let's get some information here to make some good decisions. So it's a little bit of everything.
If there's tight supply, that means that some of the rougher product is going to show up on the market too. Yeah. Everyone's seeing it. And so one thing that I wrote down that I wanted to bring up for everybody that I think is huge is inspectors have a tremendous amount of value, but at the same time, they're generalists. Mm-hmm. They know a little bit about a lot of things. But then when they all of a sudden come up with an AC issue, a roof issue, a foundation issue, you then have to reach out to another vendor. Yes. So let's circumvent that problem and that time issue. When you call your inspector, call your HVAC guy, call your roofer, and call your foundation, because as far as I know, those 3 other trades are willing to come out and do a free consultation. And so why wait to get behind the 8 ball when you need them? When they want to already earn the agent's business, they are going to come out. They're going to provide that free consultation so that you're ahead of the game, not behind.
Well, I'm going to throw one thing out there, Lathram, because this has been, and Ashley, you may jump in on this one, because it's been my experience that plumbers, electricians, air conditioning guys, they come in to fix a problem. Hey, my air conditioning's not cooling. Hey, the plug in my bedroom is whatever. They come very myopic to that problem. They're not used to coming in and looking as a generalist with their knowledge. So I use the word generalist roughly here, but they are not. I don't find that they are particularly good at coming in and doing an overview of a system.
They're more solution-based. They're more solution-based. They're not going in there doing the diagnostic work. But
exactly,
I think that's plumbers and electricians.
Yeah, no, but on the same token, there are a lot of inspectors that have evolved their game. So now they have more of a 5-point inspection that you can do before listing. And there's on both sides, everybody can sit there and give you the yay and nay on, do you really want to do a precursory, full inspection or a 5-point inspection? But I will tell you right now, more often than you're going to find it out. Exactly. So would you rather have egg on your face, get 7-10 days down the road, and then it's going to cost your seller more? Or do you do what Lathram basically is saying, get a 5-point diagnostic inspection of your major mechanics, then you're able to bring in your specialist where you say, here are my problems that have been brought to the table, and cure those.
I am really big on pre-inspection, pre-listing inspection. I feel really strongly about it, and most
You
of
don't
my
want to lose
listings.
it.
Yeah.
No, and I know there's agents that come in and go, "Oh my gosh, we'd have to disclose." Do you think their inspector's not going to find
Thank
it?
you.
And we would have never come down $5,000 or $10,000 if we knew we needed a heat exchanger or a whatever, right?
$1,200 worth of repairs, it ends up costing 5 times more in a price reduction. So,
Exactly. So,
but
I think, again, knowledge is a powerful tool.
it
So,
absolutely is when you have the
yeah,
tools to combat what you're dealing with. So that's
right.
why we've got our great panel on today. We've got a couple of questions and things coming up. First of all,
Okay.
Travis Lee Moore said, "Hey people." So hey, so glad you joined us. So interesting question, and let's not all jump on Jeff at once, but if the closing doesn't happen on time, but the buyer still wants the property, can the seller agent then take over as the agent for both sides to eliminate the commission to the buyer's agent?
Whoa, wait. Say that again. What?
I said, don't all jump at Jeff at once. Okay. So basically, Jeff wants to know timeline gets busted. Okay. And the buyer still wants the house and the seller still wants to sell it, but there's no longer a contract. Can the seller agent jump in and take over and negate a buyer's agent? Go for
First
it.
of all, the first thing that should have happened is you should have extended the closing. You should have amended the contract and extended the closing. That's first and foremost.
Sure.
If a closing's going to be 1 day late, guys, I don't care what the reason is. We all understand buyer and seller are happy. It doesn't matter. If it's going to be 1 day late, you must amend your contract to a new closing date. You can't let that get by you. And so, in which case, you still have a buyer and a seller. You still have a buyer rep agreement, I'm assuming. You still have a listing agreement, I'm assuming. And all of those things stay in place. So, why would you negate or pull? I'm confused. Why would you pull your agents out of the package? I don't understand.
Let me speak to this because I see how Mary Beth and her team work, and I hear where Jeff is going with that question. We're all trying to help each other in the industry and circumventing these issues.
Mm-hmm.
How I have seen Mary Beth's group in circumventing these is they're involved from day one on both sides.
Yeah.
They are getting permission to talk to lenders, to talk to the appropriate people who are going to push this deal along. Because if you're waiting till the end, we're already too late.
Right.
And something in regards to Mary Beth saying, let's get the deal extended, you want to do that as soon as humanly possible, as soon as you see that there might be an issue, because no seller, not one seller out there, wants a last minute request for extension.
No.
And you start causing the issues. Maybe someone's moving out, someone's paying off something other than just their regular home debt that we don't all know about. Something of that nature is going on behind the scenes. And what I would say is, we're talking about deals are extending. That's the story right now, right? Every vendor's busy. The lenders are working refis crazily on top of the resale business. But we push every one of our clients to always go for the extension as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And have the buyer put their money where their mouth is. They've already put up the
So
earnest money. Have them
no,
release
well,
it.
Well, and that's the whole point. This sounds like a different situation with Jeff. He said that the seller didn't want to extend, and because the seller's parents are the agents and the owner, or agent's owner. So that's kind of a one-off as far as that goes. That's almost like I'm a partner in the deal. I'm I mean that's a little different. The seller's son was the agent. So here's what you have to understand though: just because a contract terminates, our contracts also, and Mary Beth, you can attest to this, are we making good faith to still close it at the same time? And so there's some of that gray area as far as our closing time frame goes as well. So if you're just trying to cut out a commission, that buyer's agent still probably has a buyer's representation agreement, which is enforceable with said buyer. And if they want to sit there and enforce that could bust the deal with the fact that they can't qualify now because they have to pay an agent's commission on top of that because the seller no longer wants to.
At the end of the day, I want to put an end of the day to this. At the end of the day, I don't know about you guys, but I work to get paid. That is, none of us, 0 from 0 is 0. That's a math equation. You can deal with that later in your spare time. But why are we trying to work against each other? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That right there just makes me kind of a little bit unhappy, because why are we trying to knock each other out of something when they work to get the buyer there, you work to get the seller there? I'm like, come on, guys, we're all in this for, I mean, I love what I do. I love this industry, but I got to tell you, I'm doing it because I'd like to get paid. I mean, all of us, the title company doesn't get paid, the lender doesn't get paid, nobody gets paid. So it's in our best interest to, and here's the bottom line too, if we had interfered with a transaction, oh my goodness, guys, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Hey,
And
Lathram, going back on that, and Mary Beth, I've had this issue, and last year in Forms and Contracts we talked about it. What if everybody wants to put up a fight about the earnest money? When you have something that goes like that.
That's where I was going. But Ashley, you and Mary Beth are talking about important things. Mary Beth is saying, go work your tushy off to get the extension. Ashley, you're referencing the law that allows, if you're making a good effort to get the deal closed, that it can go past the contract date. The only issue there, and why Mary Beth is saying go get that definitive amendment, is because nobody wants to have to go to the court and argue over the fact, did this person make the enough effort to do it? So if you get it in black and white and it's executed, it takes all that question out. And then what you're bringing up about earnest money goes back to my point. At the end of every extension amendment, it needs to then say, upon execution of this amendment, buyer agrees to release all earnest money to the seller without further authorization from either party. Because I don't care if it's my mother's money or a random client's money. If someone is objecting to it as the title company, we're going to hold on to that money. And that's where a lot of people have issue, because they're like, well, can't you read the contract? We can, but title company can't play judge or jury. So take all that out. Get an extension, get the money out of the title company, and goodness, I mean, what a better way to make a seller feel good about extending a deal and to call out a buyer. Are you really going to move forward or not? And we can put some love language in there. It still states that the earnest money is to be credited at closing if and when the buyer closes by 5 p.m. on the new date.
Hey, Lathram, we've got a question in regards to that. Is that not in some instances where you put in the additional language into that amendment without any further, authorization? Is that not teetering on practicing law potentially in some eyes?
Well, I got that from our attorney. I just threw it out there verbally. Make a note of it. You can tell him Jay Settle told you so.
So Jay Settle, attorney at law.
Yeah, okay. I agree, but I'm just telling you the concept. But yes, you're absolutely correct. We don't want anyone practicing law, but that is the language that that our attorneys have created, that we provide to our clients to make everybody feel better.
I think that's what's important here, is that when you have good partners that have the resources in place, you can tap them in. But we got to make sure there's documentation of that, and we're all on the same page. But if an agent is willy-nilly just writing in their own language, please don't do that, because we've got a couple of new agents that are on here, and I think we have an appraisal addendum because agents started practicing law and special provisions. Exactly. By the way, so yeah.
Speaking of appraisal clause, let's jump in that. Jason, let's talk about that darned old appraisal clause.
Hold on. Time out 1 second, Mary Beth. Sure. We had one more question that I did want to go to, because I think we'll all have a small perspective on that. So Patricia Nguyen said, buyer's agent here, if closing needs to be extended at seller's request and buyer is now incurring additional closing costs, can buyer request seller to cover those additional closing costs?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, anything's
negotiable. It kind of depends on why the seller is asking for it.
Right.
We would honestly need a little bit more detail there.
Patricia, and that would be interesting to know. Is it because their house isn't finished and they're trying to stay back? Is that why they're delaying?
Are they clearing title?
Is there clearing? Yeah, exactly. Or is it a contractual issue, or is it a preference issue? And if it's a preference issue, but you're in a multiple offer situation, it's all about leverage at the same time too.
Totally.
Well, it could be that they're having to, leave their apartment because they had to vacate on this date. So now they're staying in a hotel. So there's a whole lot of issues that could go on there. But I think if whichever party's been damaged by not closing, I think you have every right to ask the other party.
So Patricia gave more context. She said the seller's having foundation repairs done. Well, I think that's in the buyer's best benefit to not be the physical owner of the property while the foundation repairs are being done. So no, as a buyer, I would not sit there and scream. I would say, thank you so much for continuing to repair the home I intend to inhabit.
The contract allows for some flexibility, especially if that was a requested item through the option period negotiations. And it's the vendor who's they're having issues with, or they're having to complete that work. There is some flexibility built in.
Yeah.
But
and
Patricia,
again, you go back to the fact, it rained for 4 days. And so maybe they started the foundation but couldn't finish it. Or life happens, guys. Life happens on the way to closing. So our job as the agent is to help calm the waters and find solutions for everybody to come out as a winner on stuff like that. I mean, you can't change the weather. You can't change some circumstances. One of our vendors got COVID last week, and what are you going to do? Have them drag them to do the work? I mean, come on. Well, now we got to get someone else in there. So it just takes time, and we all need to be a little bit
patience and
generous.
grace.
Yes,
patience and grace.
Thank
you.
But
Patricia, that was a great question, and truly, until you have to deal with something like that, you don't know how to advocate on your client's behalf. That's what we're all trying to do on both sides. Right. Are we advocating appropriately? And if the seller's having to do foundation repair and you're the buyer's agent, how I would explain it as the buyer's agent is, hey, give them the bandwidth to make the repairs because you don't want to inherit an issue. And it's really a benefit that it's happening now and not after you move in. So they might have to be paying some more cost, but overall it's a good thing for your buyer. So Mary Beth, sorry I interrupted you and you wanted to go back into the appraisal
I'm
addendum.
glad you had the question. Jason, I want to go to the appraisal. I'm just curious, when you see an appraisal addendum that says, well, let me just quickly review it. Line number 1 says, I'm willing to pay whatever. I brought in an offer of X number of dollars. It's way over asking price. I'm willing to pay it. Period. End of the story. We're done. Line number 2 says, I've gone over asking price. I'm willing to go over appraised value to a point, and then I'm out. And the third one is it absolutely has to appraise for this or we're out, almost like an FHA appraisal clause that's in the contract or in third-party finance. So I'm just curious, when you see an appraisal clause that says, I'm in it for anything, does it raise a red flag?
Absolutely. I mean, you wonder, well, for one, it lends to the market that we're in, right, with the lack of inventory. But it does bring up a red flag to know what they're getting into. And then you have to dig in to make sure they have the funds if it does come in $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 light.
Yeah. Lathram, what are you seeing on that?
I am seeing more appraisal addendums than we've seen in years. Well, since they came right at the beginning when they were introduced, obviously we're dealing with the same kind of market. Sometimes these addendums come a little bit after they were really needed, but they're playing a role again. And you talk about the 3 different options. Yeah. We're usually dealing with option 2, right? What is the delta that the buyer is willing to pay in cash? And no two ways about it. We're talking about contracts and addenda. That is one that is still very, very confusing to the real estate professionals, which I don't blame them. I almost read it every time I give advice on it. And so in regards to that, it's a real tool. It plays a role. It absolutely took me aback when I hear that a lender, that it does provide a red flag to a lender. But if someone is signing that, we're hoping that they have the ability to do as they are contracting, right? That's what we're hoping in every transaction. Right. But so the appraisal addendum is really important. It is an option these days. And even if we're a little bit hesitant because a lender may look at this and be like, why are we seeing this? It may be your only option in a a neighborhood that's up and coming,
Mhm.
a possible overbidding above asking price, and something that I know that we all talked about prior to the video today is looking at what are some other options other than appraisal addendum. Okay.
I love some of your ideas. I want you to share a few of those with us. Now this is going to be a little radical, so I'm just warning everybody. This is, don't try this at home. Let's see. I think that Lathram had some really creative ideas instead of going over asking price necessarily. That's not to say you might not. That's
Or
not the point here.
way over.
But when a house is listed for $100,000, we know we have a lot of that out there in the market, don't we? And so you're willing to come in at $120,000. That's a substantial, and I've seen that. I've seen 20,000 over asking price. So that's a pretty substantial delta there.
Right.
So throw some ideas out that you gave us.
And you're seeing 20,000 over, but really you're talking about a $400,000 product or a $300,000,
Yeah,
$700,000. Right. So, but percentage wise, still you got to look at it. And what we have all decided or discussed was there's also some hybrids in here. So I'm going to throw out some of these radical ideas, but at the same time there is a hybrid in there. So you can use an appraisal addendum up to a certain amount, but you don't have to make such a huge delta if you use possibly some of these other tools. And I will hit on a couple of those real quick for everybody. And again, we can take some of these conversations offline if someone has questions after the program, etc. But a couple of those options is the very first and simple one is the option fee. Okay. I personally believe that option fees need to continue to get stepped up. They got stepped up for a while, and then everybody went back to $100.
Yeah, that's not enough.
In this competitive market, if you're representing the seller, you need to be looking at that, and you need to be looking at it seriously, and you need to be talking about a minimum of $250, and we see stuff $500, $1,000, $1,500. So
get them invested. That's
that?
why. Get them invested. That's the whole point.
Seriously,
100%.
I tell people you're going to blow that at Starbucks. $100? Are you kidding me? I mean, really? You're going to
Ashley, that's absolutely the goal in that. Again, put your money where your mouth is. Get everyone invested in the contract, in the process to get this asset disposed of.
But
so
you
we
had
got
another point there.
Yes,
but the option fee is not going to be refunded back to the buyer. That's the catch here.
Yeah,
You're giving them $500, for example, as an option fee, and the seller's going to keep it. It's not going back at all to the buyer.
And so where I'm going and bringing up the option fee is you have a very clear option in the promulgated contract that it's to be credited or not credited.
Right.
So all of a sudden, there is 99.9% of the time it is marked that it's going to be credited at closing. If you have an option fee in there of $500 or $1,000 and you mark that it's not going to be credited, that is additional cash in the seller's hands. And we have confirmed with Jason that that is not utilized in the loan to value formula. Okay. So that's item number one. Item number two is the title policy. Okay. First of all, everybody needs title insurance. My kids need you to buy title insurance. But no, again, 98% of the time, title insurance is paid for by the seller, right? Industry standard. It does not have to be. In the promulgated form, it's another option. Put it on the buyer, right? So then all of a sudden, we're talking a lot more than $100, $500, or $1,000. We're talking about the title premium, which is a somewhat significant number. Right. Okay? So that can be taken on by the buyer. And then the third, which is the very radical one, it happens a lot more on the commercial side. So you all have to realize I do a lot of commercial transactions throughout the country. So I see how all the different states handle it. I see how all types of different investors handle it, from REITs to hedge funds to Fortune 500 companies, right? So I get to see all these different ways that it gets cut. A commission can be paid for by the buyer. We all know that. It just never happens. And so when you get into commission, right, option fee was typically the smaller number. Title policy is the second biggest number, and then you get into commissions, and that can again be taken off of a seller and put onto a buyer. So all of a sudden, you can affect a contract by a very large amount, but the whole key is you have to be a good steward of that. You as the real estate agent have to then, if you're on the representing the buyer, you're the uh, if you're going in and you're submitting this offer, you then have to submit an offer letter with the request that the letter be attached to the contract.
Right.
Because
Explaining these terms.
100%. Doing
Yes.
those mathematics you were talking about.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So
Now, Jason looked like he was chomping at the bit to
Yeah,
interject there for just
I
a
was going to
second.
talk
yeah,
to us, Jason.
I was going to say that too.
Let
I'm
me
like,
preach for a second. So I think those are great strategies to win a deal, especially, the upping the option fee. And then that title policy, I've seen that being used as a tool to win the offers. The surprise there is when you start that negotiation, and as the lender, you don't find that out until the contract lands on your desk. I would, advise everyone, if you're going to have that strategy, make sure that you communicate with your lending partner that this is how we're going to approach it, to make sure that those funds are there, or maybe they need more in reserves to still meet that approved eligible. So just a conversation with the lender goes a long way. This one here got a little tight because of that. They won the deal, but it was an additional $2,700 that they had to pay. That it got a little dicey there.
Because
Yeah.
you're pulling on available funds is what you're saying, and that needs to be spoken about.
right,
Exactly right.
And again, as always, Jason, and I always caution my buyers, when the lender keeps asking and asking and asking and asking, you think if he asks me one more time or one more question, I'm going to scream. But at the end of the day, where did the money come from? It's okay that grandma gave it to you. Where did grandma get the money? It's okay that mom and dad gave you the money. Where did they get the money? So at the end of the day, someone didn't borrow the money to give it to you for you to go borrow more money.
That is the key.
Yeah, somewhere down the line, someone needs to have some money, right? So I know that that's a huge issue for you as to the tracking of where the money comes from. Do we have a question, Ashley?
We have a great question. And Rachel, thank you so much for asking. Brand new agent here. Could you please go into maybe the top 2 or 3 issues at closing that can be prevented/mitigated by a proactive agent? And I kind of want to go into a little more context there, because that could be a big open door there. But I think it's more of a new agent on face value, things that you only know if you experience or experience by proxy, that we're all seeing. Nobody wants egg on their face at the end of closing. We want a good taste in everybody's mouth, because ultimately, especially as a realtor, even if it's not our fault, it's on us. We're the rainmaker, and we're the buck stops. So what are some things that we're seeing that we can be really proactive precursory in?
Remember, we got 2 sides, Mary Beth. We got the listing and buy, so
Right.
it kind of needs to be tackled in 2 phases.
Right. I want to start with probably for me, and Lathram, you mentioned this early on. For me, it is our job, both as the listing agent and the buyer's agent. It is our job to stay on top of this transaction. And I know Jason and Lathram, you have both seen many an agent dump and run. We call it the seagull effect. You dump a contract in your lap, Jason, you dump it at the title company, and you never hear from that agent again until the day of closing, and they're holding their little hand out going, I want my food, right? And so in the contract, in third-party financing, paragraph 5, it's the last paragraph, authorization to release information. Buyer authorizes buyer's lender to furnish to seller or buyer or their representatives information relating to the status of the approval for the financing. Seller and buyer authorized. It goes on to say that they can disclose that information, closing statements.
That's how you do it.
That's how you do it. So as a listing agent, when we get a letter from the lender, from the buyer that says this is our lender, we call that lender. We're on top of it every day. We're on the phone with the lender, the title company, the appraiser, all of those people.
She ain't lying.
No, I'm not. We drive people crazy. Ask Jason. But here's the flip side. Jason, on the other hand, I'm going to throw it a great bone to you, because we don't have to call you. You communicate with us every day about this transaction. Where is it in the line of, so it's all about communication. But to think that you're going to just toss a contract and walk away and come back at closing and it's all going to be okay, it's not going to happen, and not in this environment right now.
So I want to kind of play on that. Communication is key, and over communicate, Rachel. And if you think you're being a pain in somebody's butt, dig in even more.
Seriously.
You're not doing it enough at that point. And truly, we do the same thing kind of you do, Mary Beth, with my team. Is we have a kind of a standard timeline and contact detail list that gets actually attached to the email when we send a contract. So all parties are on there, all agents are on there, pertinent details are on there. And then immediately in conjunction with that is a critical dates letter. And a lot of title companies do it, which is fantastic. But we shouldn't rely on you to do that. We should be doing it ourselves.
It's our job.
Setting that expectation with our sellers and our buyers that here are all your fiduciary timelines. Here is everything that you need to do to perform accordingly, or the other side needs to. So everybody has that information, because if everybody has that expectation set, you don't really have as many surprises at the end, Rachel. But the biggest thing is communication, not only with your vendor partners, but with your clients, especially if you're going to be using an appraisal addendum. Make sure they understand what you're doing. Make sure they understand that they might be overpaying what an appraiser says the value is on that home. And let them know what the ramifications of that are. Let them know that if there's a delay, that they might have to have transitional housing. It's it's having conversations and dialogue up front before it even happens. So if something does happen, you've already set the precedent.
Well, and I think, too, what becomes really important, Ashley, I certainly have found it in my lifetime. I've been doing this a really long time. It took me a while to find my partners, but I tell you what, I'm the most loyal human being that was ever put on this earth, because when you find people who work and think like you do, God bless both of you. I'm sorry that even, it's kind of a demented thing from me. I get that. But when you find people who work and think like you do, they are golden, and you need to work with them. Those are your partners. This is what we bring to the table for our clients. We bring a lender partner that we know is going to communicate. Why put down 5%? Why put down 20%? You're earning more money right now than interest rates are. You're probably better served putting down 10%. That's what Jason brings to the table. And that's what we're looking for. We need someone to help educate our clients, but also communicate all the way through. But Jason, when I heard you say a little while ago that you often don't get a contract until you're 5 and 10 days into the transaction, I'm like, what? How does that even happen?
Yeah, it's very surprising. And then, it's like, hey, why aren't we already to this stage in the process? Hey, you have this, you have that. Sometimes the other agent doesn't even know I don't have it yet. And the buyer doesn't even know I don't have it yet, because they've already signed everything.
That's ridiculous. And then Lathram, the title commitment, all the title work says very specifically in the contract, it's 20 days after you receive the contract, not 20 days after the effective date. Your timeline starts after you receive the contract. So if you don't get it to the title company on time, shame on you. But then you also didn't get your earnest money there on time. Wait, that's a whole nother issue, but we'll talk about that another day. But bottom line is, your time frames, guys, it's imperative. If you want something to get done, you got to get your stuff to your lenders and your title companies. You got to get on it.
So, Rachel, I think in summation, communicate, set expectations. That's on either side. Make sure all partners have it. I mean, we send that detailed letter, whether we're the listing agent or the buyer's agent, and copy said lender on either side, whether it's our lender or the cooperative agent's lender, just to ensure that lender has the information. And then also make sure your lender has, we've talked, Jason, you've spoken about this, 30 days maybe after the option period. But how about, even if it's just 30 days, do you have 4 full working weeks? If there's holidays in between or something else, count those actual working days out for your lender too, to make sure. But you know what? If you copy your lender on your offers and make that a habit too, your lender knows to ask you, hey, did you get that executed? even if you go, crap, I've been running ragged, but thank you so much for saying that.
That's a great idea, Ashley.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or
Great
it's
idea.
need to also pick up the phone and call that seller and their seller's agent and tell them how strong that offer is as well. And that works in favor too. And they can ask me whatever. As many times as I do that, I can't tell you how many times the seller's agent goes, I've never been called by a lender before. I'm like,
oh my goodness.
We have won contracts because Jason's made a phone call to the other agent going, I know you've got multiple offers, but I got to tell you, these guys are golden. We've got a loan waiting for a house rather than we found the house, now we need a loan. We've already got the loan. We need a house to go with our loan. Yeah, he has won a lot of battles.
That just gave me goosebumps. That's
made
incredible.
a phone call. Yeah.
You should put that on a t-shirt, Mary Beth. I think that's good.
No, it makes a lot of
just
sense.
need the house. No, it absolutely does, and it makes a big difference for somebody like Mary Beth and myself on the receiving end for multiple. Sometimes deals or offers are really close. Where is that edge? And it's having the great partners on the other side that we know. Okay, not only is the agent good, but the vendor partners are good too.
Exactly.
Partners are not decided by the number of cookie bouquets or beers they buy you either.
Seriously, don't ever buy me another one. No, well, Rice Krispie treats, but that's fine.
Well, but Val Garcia also brought up a good question. With all the refinancing going on, should we move closing dates to 40 days instead of the normal 30? Val, that's a fantastic question. And Jason, I will let you reiterate that on your end.
I think that's a great idea for that negotiation period. Again, that seems like a heavy shift in my mind. Even for me to say 40 days seems like a really long time.
Yeah.
But
it's reality.
I would think it would serve your clients well. You're going to set proper expectations. It's going to be a less stressful, situation. And then, like I said earlier on, if you weren't on the call, it says honor before. It's always a great phone call when you say, hey, we're able to close this thing 5 or 6 days early. And everybody looks like a hero in that situation.
Be bold as the listing agent. Because, the buyers were talking about these competitive situations, right? For a buyer's agent to come in and be like, oh, we need 40 days, right? No one really wants to say that out loud. So be bold as the listing agent. Know that and understand what type of market we're in right now and play the right game.
Yeah.
Use the cards that are being dealt. Don't try and force it. So if you really want to be bold as a listing agent and someone gives you the right offer, go ahead and talk about a 35 or a 40-day closing. The same thing, one note I made that I would want everyone to think about, because we were talking about a couple of pitfalls, and not to throw this in there, but just with all the new construction and new developments, HOAs are just more and more prevalent, right? There's more condo product, right? There's a lot more of that development going on. There's continued development in the suburbs that typically involves HOAs. I need everyone to remember that. You mentioned, hopefully your title company does do a critical dates letter. By the way, National Title Group does a critical dates letter on every transaction.
Yes, you do.
But what I'm going to say is, take those critical dates, put them into your calendar, but at the same time, you've got to be realistic about those timeframes. And one thing that does involve the statute separate from the promulgated language is that the HOA companies, they do have 10 days.
10 days.
They are allowed by Texas state law to take 10 days to provide the HOA documentation.
Right.
And so when you go in and you make an aggressive offer, or you're on the listing side and you accept aggressive offer, I'm staring at you, by the way, Ashley, that you've got to know what those laws are and what the timeframes are, because those are variables that no one here controls. So if you put in there that the HOA is going to be provided in 3, 5, 7, 8 days, anything less than 10, you are not putting out there an expectation that is really doable unless we do a rush order. And so we get put in a predicament.
Not going to get it. Yeah.
And the contract does not have language in there that addresses who pays for that rush fee. And rush fees are pretty significant. They're $150 to $250, sometimes $300. And so we're talking about a real number that some people may balk at. and it does not say who's responsible for it, I think it defaults down to the seller if they're the one saying we're going to provide it and we've agreed to contract to provide it within a time frame less than 10 days.
Yeah.
But if you're the listing agent, you better expect that the title company is either going to call you, or if they don't call you, it's just going to show up on the settlement statement, and there's going to be an additional rush fee.
So that's a good point. So yes, Val, 40 days probably would be a little bit better depending on the time frame of your option period. Making sure that the lender has the contract, which they should already be privy to that when you're making the offer. That there's no holidays or bumps and bruises in there. The one thing that we haven't talked about, though, that I really think is the major source of contention right now with timelines is appraisers. And
Yes.
it's that's not anything that really any of us on this phone call right now have control over. But appraisers are new ones aren't entering the business, and I think that's the key that people aren't realizing. It's not about that we have so much work; it's the fact that we have a business that's kind of aging out from the standpoint of there's so much automation that nobody sees it as a long-term, stable environment to go in as employment. And so we've got tons of demand and we've got a very little amount of appraisal bandwidth. Jason, can you talk about that aspect for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. Where we're seeing the most delays as an industry would be, the government-backed loans that have that appraisal, like VA and FHA, kind of outside of our control a little bit more. But as far as an appraisal panel is set up, we're still seeing our appraisals come in 10 business days or less for the most part, unless you're rural or a seller is hard to get a hold of to make that appointment to get it shown. But other than that, again, 15 days on a VA, 15 days on an FHA, and I'm talking about business days. So you can see that can really add up, and it's
3 weeks.
Yeah,
that's 3 weeks. I asked the forms committee and Trek why we couldn't timestamp the appraisal, because we have a timestamp for the credit worthiness of the buyer, but there is no timestamp for the appraisal. They could truly do the appraisal day before closing. I mean, there is no timestamp. There is no this must be done by this date. And the reason that there is no timestamp that I am told is because it's involving a third party that has nothing to do with this transaction. This transaction is between the buyer and the seller, and it has nothing to do with a third party being an appraiser. So you cannot tie an appraisal to a date because we're tying basically an unauthorized person. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Timestamp for the credit worthiness.
Yeah. So we
and here's the deal. I mean, Kathy Mitchell just chimed in. Good old Kathy Mitchell from Metrotex.
Yeah,
they're ordering appraisals during option, and that's another thing to do. I mean, I'm in a deal right now where it's a domino effect. And my client was on the ball and ordered the appraisal because we felt really confident on the condition of the home. Ordered the appraisal at the time of contract, basically, when the soonest we could. The appraiser was there the same time as the inspector. I'm like, that's unheard of. And so we're clear to close, and we were under contract on our sale on the listing, a week prior. And I'm still today, I'm like sitting here waiting for the appraisal to come in. This was done 2 weeks ago on the purchase, and I'm still waiting. It's due today, and we're closing in 3 days. Yeah. And so that's the hardest part is as a listing agent mandating that, or as a buyer's agent aggressively presenting that as a part of the offer.
Right. It's a tough one.
That done, we'll call in as soon as you get the appointment scheduled and paid for, the appraisal paid for, then they'll put that 10 days out. So if you can get a jump cut, like they said, get that paid for, get the ball rolling, you'll get in line much faster. Because usually they're not going to get it done for another 7 to 10 days, but you don't want that to start 5 or 6 days later than necessary.
Great call.
And that's Jason made the comment, a little bit ago about 30 days. 30 days is only 20 days to a lender because it's weekdays where our contracts are running days. There is no work day. There is no weekday. It's 7 days running days. But as far as actual people working, like appraisers and things like that, you only have 5 days in that week. And if, like you say, if one's a holiday or something like that, you even have less time. So when we say we want 30 days to close, understand that's only 20 days of actual working days for banks and lenders and that type of thing. Not that y'all don't work on the weekend, don't get me wrong, but it's, it's a shortened period. It's not what we're thinking. So I won't go ahead, Ashley.
So Travis Lee said, you can't hold appraisers to a timestamp. You're blowing my mind. So it's not necessarily that you can't hold them to a standard, but that's on you. Knowing what the time frame is and talking to your lender and saying, if it's ordered today, how many business days
Right.
post ordering are we looking at? Again, it goes back to running the transaction like Mary Beth's team does, like our team does. Make sure you don't just dump and run as the head of your team too. Make sure the people that are running that transaction and all offices are continuing to keep those timelines straight.
Right.
So,
guys, I want to hear from Lathram and Jason. We're certainly in different times. I think we can all admit that times are a little strange this year.
What are you talking about, Mary Beth?
It was, I don't know. I went on an extended vacation and I don't know what happened. So I'm curious, what are you guys seeing? What are some things is there anything we can control? Because my theory is control the controllables and then you're freed up for the fire, right? So talk to me. What are you seeing out there?
Jason, go ahead.
So the controllables, right? So do you have a specific, a scenario in mind? One of the things that I talk about controllables, if you have a property that you're selling and you need that sale to go on to buy your new property, that's a big one for us right now. Don't have those close on the same day, if at all possible, when you're transferring those funds from the sale to your purchase. That's a controllable there. Knowing if your clients are going to be out of town, to have some type of a mail out. And by the way, that's on a Monday. That makes it even more challenging.
Yeah. Why does anyone try and close on a Monday? Why does anyone try and close on a Monday?
Check a calendar when you're writing your contracts.
Seriously.
That is the biggest advice ever. Ashley has made her statement.
Woo-hoo!
Look at the calendar.
Right.
Yeah.
Jason, I want to jump back and just be sure everyone understood what you said. On an addendum for the sale of other property, because so many people do have to sell before they can buy. It's common, very common for all of us to see that addendum on there. On the first line, it says that this contract is contingent on the successful closing and funding of my house that I live in right now, 1234 Main Street, before I can buy 456 Brown Street, right? So what he's saying is don't let those two dates be the same. The contractual date on the house you're buying is one thing. The house that you're selling should be closing a couple of days at a minimum before. You can't, unless you're closing with the same title company, which is a gift. When you're in the same town, but so many of our clients are coming from out of state now that their homes are closing in California and they're bringing the funds to Dallas. You cannot close both of those on October 20th. It can't happen, guys. It's the likelihood of that going well is not great. So if you would close the California house, say on the 16th, 17th, 18th, whatever, and then have those funds transferred to Dallas for a closing on October 20th, for example, that would be a much smoother transaction. And I think that's what you're referring to, right?
Yeah, it can be done. It's just uncomfortable and it's a lot of stress. It's a lot of money moving to different places. Like you said, the same title company, golden, that rarely ever happens. But you're doing your clients a favor by just giving them a little bit of a cushion. Because let's say the Fed's down, money's not moving, then everybody's just sitting at the title company twiddling their thumbs, and just give that chance for money to move and just have a less stressful transaction.
That's a real good point. Yeah.
So we are about 5 minutes away from our timeline. You guys have made it so wonderful and so fast with our guest today.
Seriously, it's like, when do we run out of time?
I know, we never run out of time, but let's allow for another question or two to pop in. But in the meantime, does everybody, because I know all of four of us probably have a little nugget that maybe we'd like to share that wasn't pertinent to a question asked or anything else, but is there anything nagging on any of us that we can share with a lot of these new and veteran agents that are on the call right now?
Lathram, you want to take that one?
One thing that I wanted to throw out there that I don't see enough agents doing is utilizing their insurance agent. We've seen as we were kind of talking about other products showing up that maybe wasn't sellable before is now popping up, and that creates kind of issues in its own or whatever. Everyone remember that this is a long-term game. That's going, we need integrity, right? What is integrity? Doing what's right when others aren't looking. And so part of that is also, I understand as an agent, it is commission based, right? So we all got to pay those bills. We got to get through to tomorrow. It starts putting baby in a corner, right?
Nobody
And
puts
so,
baby in the corner.
right. And so what I'm saying is just keep that long-term approach to it, because your ethics and the ability to say no and the ability to manage your clients appropriately, that is going to pay dividends.
Yes, sir.
And I unfortunately am seeing more lawsuits, more bankruptcies, a lot of things that we don't want to see. But at the same time, we have a crazy busy real estate market, right? So those two things come to a head. And so not only do we need to give each other grace, do we need to give, the other agent grace, our vendors grace, but at the same time, we need to approach it from an ethical place. And at the same time, if you're thinking that you're dealing with someone who may not have those same ethics as you, question them.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You have got to take care of your client. That is your fiduciary duty. And what I was going to say that because we've had, I mentioned the lawsuits, something that I know of 3 active lawsuits right now where the seller's disclosure is being claimed to have been inaccurate.
Got 2 of them.
And so,
Yeah.
so between her 2 and my 3, we're talking about 5 just amongst us. I would say my little nugget, if I can get to it in my long-winded way, would be utilize your insurance agents, because one tool that you do have is clue reports.
There you go.
And
Awesome.
if you are not utilizing your insurance agent and having them pull clue reports, you're just you're missing a tool that's there, and it's not going to tell you everything, but it's going to at least be one more tool in your chest. And so that's my little nugget. Again, we can talk more about that. Hopefully everybody has a go-to insurance agent. You can ask them about what clue reports are. It tells you the history of any claims that have been made against a property. Use your tools. Question the people that need to be questioned. Keep your ethics in line, and understand, we've all heard it over the last 6 months. We're all in this together.
Seriously,
Good
that
job.
and surround yourself with great people. That's my final thing on this. Find your people and wrap yourself up in them, because they will. It's all about, at the end of the day, we don't want just this client. I don't know about you guys, but I want that client for life. I want their children, their children's children, their parents, their cousins. I want that referral business. And when we've done a really great job and we've...
Oh, no. It's all right. Technical difficulties. Jason,
I
we're
love
going to
it.
print to you.
I'm
know.
going to take a
It's
screenshot
happened.
of that one.
Jason, while Mary Beth is buffering, maybe a nugget from you.
I have 2. One was your comment a moment ago. Know the calendar. Look at the calendar. Know if your folks are traveling. Know if there's a holiday coming. The other one also is know our environment. I was talking to an agent yesterday about a jumbo. A family was flying in, and she goes, how much time do you need? And I was like, what? It's a jumbo. At least let me have the contract 30 days before closing. Put it in my hands 30 days. She goes,
yeah.
You need 30 days? I was like, well, for one, we're talking about a jumbo. That's another animal all by itself. But number 2, even if it wasn't a jumbo, 30 days is not too much to ask for. Just kind of be aware of the environment. Know that every mortgage company is doing more capacity or at capacity, or doing more business than they've ever done. And like you said earlier too, grace. Just make sure that we're all pulling on the same end of the rope is a big thing.
Well, Jason, I think that's huge, and the biggest thing is that we are not on an island by ourselves. If agents want to act like that, then that's pretty telling on how they do business. But if they don't have consistent referral partners and vendor partners that they work with, that's always sign number one for me when it's a multiple offer situation as a listing agent. And so, bring those people in. It sounds like you guys are wealth of knowledge, and the flip of that. I think what we can all do is pay attention to the contract. Don't get too excited and forego the basics, and set proper expectations up front with your client. And, we had talked about, the hybrid approach on an appraisal addendum and closing costs. I don't say this to have an ugly tactic, but sometimes when it's tied up in the actual value of the home, a client wants to see every penny returned to them and then some. Whereas if they create that as a closing cost line item, and that's just the cost of doing business or doing a real estate transaction, it does see everybody up for success on that resale side. If the buyer does have to sell the property. But the biggest thing for all of these agents on there, talk to your partners. If you're the listing agent, talk to the lenders and the title companies and make sure that they are on track. And ultimately, just fill out your paperwork, people. So,
Including the effective date.
effective date, clean paperwork, and fill it out. So that's, those are those things. But we appreciate you. We obviously lost Mary Beth at the end. She buffered out, and that's okay. We had a wonderful show. But Lathram and Jason, you guys were phenomenal. Thank you for being our first and last guests. On Contracts has been a great show, and we just really appreciate you guys being a part of it. And keep asking the questions. This chat and feed will continue to go live, and we'll all be answering those. So this is an ever living beast, guys. So appreciate it again. And Lathram and Jason's contact info is in the feed and our promo materials. So thank you so much, guys, for spending your evening with us.
Thank you.